And welcome to another Cardinals Nest here on HBC TV 25. This is the show devoted exclusively to St. Mary's University and its athletic programs. And today we have a special episode of the Cardinals Nest. We have the usual suspects, myself, Dean Beckman, along with Sports Information Director Donnie Netto. But today we also have someone else joining us for the entire program, and it's Matt Higgins. Matt is the Assistant Executive Director of the Minnesota Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, the MIAC. So Matt, welcome to the program. Your first time on the Cardinals Nest. However, this is not your first time on HBC, because back when the men's hockey playoffs, the championship game was at St. Mary's. You came on up during one of the intermission breaks and gave us your knowledge about the MIAC, and you'll do so again today. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, yeah, that was great to join you then, and feel privileged to be here with you and Donnie now, two of the best in the biz. So I'm hoping I can carry my weight.
The SID bookends here are going to gang up on you, I think, is going to be the way it is today.
That's all right. Well,
welcome aboard.
Great, thanks for having me.
That's right. That's
Great.
right.
Matt, we'll get to the state of the MIAC first here, but before we do that, let's learn a little bit more about you. You joined the MIAC around 2010, right?
Yeah, I started in the summer of 2010, so it's hard to believe, but it's year 7 in the conference, which I feel like I have to keep recounting that because it's gone so fast. Time flies when you're having fun, right? But yeah, it's been great to get to know all 13 of our schools and work with all 22 of our sports, and very fortunate to be in this position.
Yeah. You know, from the position that you're in, what has been the biggest change from year 1 to now year 7?
Ooh, good question right off the bat. I just think there's been a lot of changes. I think it's that we're always trying to do more and find more ways to cover our teams, to promote our teams. From the administrative side in the conference, we certainly don't rest on our laurels or kind of just go with the status quo. Our coaches are always coming up with new legislation to try to improve the sport. Our administrators are doing that kind of to improve the sport on the national level. So we're sponsoring 2 proposals at the national level this year. So we're trying to really affect change in college athletics and do the best things we can for our student athletes.
Matt, one of those things when you propose legislation and anytime you look at something related to the conference, I know you and Dan McCain, who's the executive director, you always take a look at the core values of the conference. So maybe that would be a good place to start. Let's talk about those core values and how everything the conference does wants to have some purpose related to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of started through a strategic plan a few years ago. We started looking at an identity campaign promoting who we are as a conference, and part of that was we should identify our core values and figure out exactly who we are as a conference and what those values mean to us. And then going forward from there, it's easy to promote who you are once you figure out who you are. So we did a lot of work surveying student athletes, coaches, administrators, and it was kind of nice because everybody was kind of on the same page, and it was really, from that standpoint, it was really easy to figure out what we stood for. And so kind of the 4 that stood out were quality athletics. Obviously, we have very high quality athletics throughout the conference, very competitive, very high level of competition. And then academics, we're obviously a very academic-focused conference. It's why we're here. It's why you have the kind of the scholastic impact in athletics. So it's all about what we do with academics. And then student-athlete well-being, which is obviously making sure our student-athletes are well taken care of. And their health and safety and development is kind of the first and foremost with everything we do for them. And then obviously the integrity, the sportsmanship, doing everything we do with a high level of integrity, honesty, and good ethics, things like that. So those are our 4 core values, and we definitely try to promote those in everything that we do.
And one of the unique things about the MIAC is that it's the only Minnesota athletic conference where all of the schools, all 13 schools, reside within the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool thing about who we are. I know for a while there was a Division III conference that was spread out across 3 time zones. So when they hear that half of our schools are within 3 miles of each other in St. Paul, a lot of the other conferences are pretty jealous of our setup. And even, you guys aren't too far. We love making the short drive down to St. Mary's as well, or even all the way up to Concordia. So we're very fortunate to be so close. And I think that really gives our conference sense of those rivalries. You're so close to one another, you can develop those strong rivalries. The players have all played against each other from high school all the way up, so it's just a really cool thing that we're so close-knit and all kind of located in one state. It kind of really helps us identify who we are.
One of the nice things for your position in the conference is you get to tell a lot of stories. Mm-hmm. And I know that when you guys started talking about kind of changing the focus of the MIAC, one of your strong pushes was let's tell some more stories. Talk a little bit, because of your background, that really is something that you do very well, is just tell the MIAC student athlete story.
Yeah, definitely. Well, First of all, I think in terms of media coverage for Division III conference, we're probably one of the best covered conferences. The fact that I'm sitting here talking with you all on a TV show right now proves that. But I mean, even in our big media market, we still get pretty good media coverage. And I get a lot of comments from conference colleagues throughout the nation. They're like, man, we wish we got some of the same exposure you got. But at the same time, we kind of realize where we're at on the totem pole. There's the Vikings and the Twins and all the professional sports. We got a Division I university, Big Ten university right in our backyard. So it's kind of knowing where we fall on the totem pole. And it's like, you know what? Every chance we get, we're going to try to get the media to tell our story, but where they're unable to, we're going to take it and run with it and tell it ourselves. So I have a journalism background, sports writer, sports editor, and so I brought that experience to this position that maybe previously hadn't been here. And so it's if those groups aren't going to tell our story, we're going to tell it ourselves. So we've done a lot of different things. We have a Friday feature series where we try to tell human interest, the off-the-court stuff, get to know the student athletes better, and tell some of those inspirational stories throughout the conference, some of their academic pursuits. We do a lot of videos, kind of helping people understand who our student athletes are more than just a jersey number or a stat line. And so promoting who they are, that's really who our conference is. And so really trying to promote our student athletes, who they are, all the amazing things they do is kind of one of my biggest priorities.
Another way you do that too is you have a podcast on the website.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're very fortunate. So Mike Gallagher is an Augsburg alum, and when he was still a student athlete, his coach came in and said, hey, I have a guy who's interested in broadcasting. Can you use him for the baseball playoffs or something like that? And so he did the baseball playoffs for us and then did a phenomenal job, and he's like the most over-prepared broadcaster I've ever met. He knows everything forward and backwards, and so he did some broadcasting for us for a year or two, and then he came in and said, hey, I have resources to a studio. I'd love to do a MIAC podcast once a week and focus on the big stories and interviews, and so yeah, Mike's been doing that for, I think it's been about 3 years now, and every week we have a new episode of MIAC Weekly. He does an awesome job with it, and yeah, you can come and get that on the MIAC website, MIACathletics.com, but yeah, Mike does a phenomenal job. We're very lucky to have him and have him use his talents that way to help promote our league.
And then, too, you made some improvements to the app, the mobile app. So
yeah.
Maybe talk about if someone downloads the MIAC app, what they could expect there.
Sure. Well, we have our website, MIACathletics.com. That's where you can find all this great stuff we've been talking about. But we do also have a mobile app, and it's called the MIAC Front Row app. So if you go to either the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store, just search MIAC Front Row, free download. And for me, it's great. On a Saturday, we have so many games going on. Follow all the scores. There's links to follow the games live. That's where you can get updated standings right away. There's links to all the news stories we do. So many people are getting their news that way on their smartphone now, where the mobile versions of websites don't always cut it. So now we have an app where you can get it in a very mobile-friendly way as well. So on the go, the MIAC can always be with you.
You were talking that we have to battle with the professional teams in the cities, but I think that the MIAC is kind of beginning to really earn some swagger amongst national audiences. You look at the two times we've been on ESPN. You've got the Troll from Concordia, and then the College Game Day bus that went to St. Thomas and St. John's. So I mean, as a small Minnesota conference, we're very well respected amongst the nation as well.
Absolutely. I think a big part of it is, I talked about all those other organizations. We've been around longer. I mean, we've been, other than the University of Minnesota, we've been around longer than any of them. The MIAC's about to celebrate our centennial in 2019, so we're approaching 100 years of operating as a conference, and many of our schools playing sports longer than that even. So there's that long history, there's those great rivalries and traditions, and currently we're doing so well on a national stage. Our teams are doing so well, they're helping to attract attention, our student athletes are performing at such a high level that it all kind of works together, and then you get to have those kind of cool opportunities.
One of the things I wanted to mention too is all of the community outreach that the conference does, but specifically your office, Matt, because one of the reasons you're on this show here today is because you're in Winona visiting St. Mary's and visiting with administrators and also student athletes, because you want to hear from them as well. So talk about some of the things your conference and specifically your executive office does for that community outreach.
Sure. Well, it's a small office, just 3 of us. So anytime we can get out of the office, interact with other people, I think it's good for all of us. But representing 13 campuses, it's important for us to get out to campus. And this morning we had a great meeting with the St. Mary's coaching staff. So to share some things from the conference perspective with them, to hear what they're working on their campus, any concerns they might have, anything we're doing well, that's great. Today we even got to have lunch with some members of the St. Mary's Student Athlete Advisory Committee. So that was really beneficial to get to have some FaceTime with student athletes. But yeah, I think we've been to, I think this was our 8th or 9th campus visit this fall, and we have the other couple ones lined up for the next couple weeks. So we'll get on every campus and get face-to-face with all of our membership. And I mean, that's the number one thing we do is serve our membership. So we're very fortunate to have these 13 outstanding colleges and universities, and any way that we can serve them and get in front of them is the number one reason why we do what we do in our office.
And we've already mentioned the executive director, Dan McCain, but a new addition to the office this year is Sheridan Blandford. So maybe talk about, Sheridan is an assistant director for the conference now.
Correct.
So talk about Sheridan's role and what she has brought to your team.
Yeah, absolutely. We were fortunate enough to receive an NCAA grant that allows us to hire an assistant director for 2 years, and it's to give opportunity to women and ethnic minorities in athletic administration. And so Sheridan was a student athlete in the MIAC. She played basketball at St. Olaf, and then went and got her master's at the University of Washington, and has been a fantastic addition. One of the big things she's working on is right here at St. Mary's. She's heading up our Student Athlete Leadership Conference that we're going to have on the St. Mary's campus in August. So it's been great to have her aboard, and she's definitely pushing us in some awesome new directions.
Matt, can you talk a little bit about the MIAC and its connection with the Special Olympics? Because I know that they're, this past year was really a very special time in terms of our conference, our schools, and its tie with the Special Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. We were fortunate enough, Special Olympics Minnesota honored us with Outstanding Service Award this year, and that was in recognition of the work that all of our schools are doing, not just our office, but all of our schools and student athletes as well. And Division III is a formal partnership with them, and it's been awesome to see the way our student athletes have bought into that. And they're not just going out and volunteering at Special Olympics events. They're coming up with their own events. They're hosting camps and clinics. They're coming up with cool kind of off the beaten path things like beanbag tournaments and all sorts of other ways to just interact and have that kind of one-on-one interaction. We had a unified basketball tournament, which was MIAC student athletes playing with Special Olympics athletes on the same team last year during Division III week. So it's just been an awesome experience, and we couldn't be proud of the way our students have embraced that.
Matt, one more question for this segment. Donnie and I, when we talk about the individual sports week in and week out and how St. Mary's does, it seems like every week we're mentioning how good the conference is athletically. You get to see that from a conference-wide perspective. I think people really need to understand the quality Division III athletics that the MIAC offers.
Yeah, it's been outstanding, and it seems to just get better and more competitive each and every year. I think for a long time we were known for a few really strong programs at the top. I think now across our standings, top to bottom, you're seeing teams that compete with one another, compete on the national level. And our student athletes certainly are known for playing for the love of the game. There's no athletic scholarships in Division III, but I think the level of competition would blow people away if they came out to a football game or a basketball game or a hockey game or anything. And we're very fortunate to have the level of talent that we have.
All right, when we come back here on the Cardinals Nest, we'll talk about some of those individual winter sports, and we'll do that next right here on HBC.
I do all my shoe shopping at Rogan's because I know I'll find what I'm looking for and save. You can count on great service, a huge selection, the best name brands, the second pair is always half price, and one more thing, a choice in how to save. I can get my second pair half price now, or just save my receipt and come back anytime and get my next pair at half price. Rogan's makes savings easy.
Selection, service, name brands, and the second pair is always half price. Visit online at roganshoes.com.
And we're back here on the Cardinals Nest. Dean Beckman, Donnie Netto, Matt Higgins from the MIAC office joining us now. And what we'll do now in this segment is we're going to go through some of the individual winter sports for St. Mary's and talk about how the teams are doing. And then Matt will contribute with how sort of that particular sport is looking from a conference-wide level. So we'll start with women's basketball because, Donnie, the women's basketball team at St. Mary's, they are on a 5-game winning streak. They're 6-1 overall. But the last few games, nail biters to say the least. Brent Pollerai, if he didn't have any gray hair before this, he certainly does now. Emma Schaefer at Carleton. banked in a game-winning shot to win 61-60 in overtime. And then the last game against Concordia, Alexa Huseman just went off in the fourth quarter, scored 13 points in one quarter, and helped St. Mary's to a come-from-behind win there.
Yeah, no question. They head into a Wednesday night's game against Bethel, 2-0 in the conference. And I think Coach Pollard would even be honest to say, you know what, they could easily be 0-2 because of the things that you just said. Brandy Blattner had a last-second shot to just send that Carleton game into overtime. And then Emma, when you said banked, she really did bank it in. And it was, it was a winner for them with 0.5 seconds left to go. So a big win at Carleton, and then a huge come-from-behind win against Concordia. And we talk about come-from-behind win, and that's really kind of what the Cardinals have been doing all year. They kind of let the team that they're playing get out in front early, and then they just go to work and take care of business. And Alexa Huseman, what do you say? She had a career-high 20 points. And 13 of those came in the fourth quarter when they needed them most. So, we've talked all year about the importance of people stepping up in big situations. She did on the offensive end, and you look at Emma Schaefer, she had 12 assists in that game. First time since 2003 we've had a woman with 12 assists in a game. So she really did a huge job of distributing the ball and found the person who had the hot hand, and Lex certainly had that, and she took care of business. 2-0, big game against Bethel on Wednesday, and then even, I don't know if it can get any bigger, but you've got the league leader in Gustavus on Saturday. So it's a tough week for the Cardinals this week in two of the top teams in the conference.
Yeah, and real quick, going back to that Carleton game, not only did Emma Schaefer have the game-winning shot, but the Cardinals also needed a shot right at the end of regulation to tie that game to send it to overtime.
Right, Brandy came through big there. Brandy has done that. I think that she's, as we talked last week, she's kind of getting adjusted to basketball now, having just finished an outstanding volleyball season. So it's going to take her a little while to get into shape, and by the end of the year, she's going to be in All-American form just like she was last year.
Yeah. So, Matt, from the conference-wide perspective now, tell us about the state of women's basketball in the MIAC.
You led off with a great sport. If the first couple weeks are any indication, we are in for an unbelievable season of women's basketball in MIAC. I think right now, 7 of our 12 teams have 2 or less losses. So I think you're seeing 2/3 of the conference playing at just an incredibly high level, and now when we're getting into conference play, we're going to really see how they stack up against one another. But I know the way that they've played against non-conference competition is going to be huge when it comes to NCAA tournament time, and we're looking at large bids and maybe getting in multiple teams from the conference. Like a few years ago, we got 3 teams in. I think the way we've performed in the non-conference season, we've set ourselves up for maybe some more of those type of postseason accolades. But I mean, it's been outstanding. We got a lot of good teams at the top, and I know St. Thomas is ranked in the top 10 right now. Gustavus is undefeated, and they recently had a National Player of the Week. So they've kind of been right at the top. But then you look at St. Mary's and Bethel and all these other teams that are playing so well, and so it's going to be really fun to see how this season shapes up.
And from the conference office, have you heard any yays, nays, positive, negative to the change that they had a couple years ago in the scheduling, and now that we play a round and a half on the women's side instead of a complete double round robin? Have you heard anything from coaches or fans?
Yeah, I mean, there's not so much from fans, but I mean, there's a lot of differing opinions among the coaches. I know some are really happy. It took a long time to push this change through, but I mean, the way our old schedule worked, they're only allowed 25 games. They were playing 22 games in conference to do a full round robin. That leaves them with very little flexibility in scheduling. And then I know one of the biggest things was we talked before about our student-athlete well-being. Our women's basketball teams were playing Monday, Wednesday, Friday almost every week in the second semester of the year. And so 3 games a week in basketball is tough, and so to give them a little more of a reprieve from that, give the coaches a little more control of their own schedule. I think obviously it's hard to crown a conference championship with an unbalanced schedule. Everything's not fully equal then, which isn't ideal, but I think the student-athlete well-being outweighs that in this situation. It's been a positive for us.
Earlier, Donnie brought up the name Brandy Blatt. You have certainly written a lot about her at the conference level. So, a 2-sport athlete here at St. Mary's, volleyball and basketball. She's only a sophomore, right?
I was going to say, she's like a senior now, right?
I know, it
I
seems
can't
like
believe it, yeah.
But just your perspective on Brandy. We talk about her on the show every week, whether it be volleyball or basketball or what have you. But at one point, she won the volleyball player of the week, I think 4 times this year. And at one time, it was 2 weeks in a row. So it's just phenomenal.
It's incredible that she's that good at 2 sports. And I think that speaks a little bit to the Division III experience. I don't think you're seeing a Division I student athlete play volleyball and basketball let alone at the level she's playing at. But I mean, she certainly burst onto the scene last year in basketball as one of the top players in the MIAC, if not the top player in the conference, and just took the conference by storm as a freshman. And then we saw her do the same thing in volleyball this fall. And now, I mean, it'll be interesting to see her kind of make that transition, as Donnie talked about. But my goodness, hard to believe she's only a sophomore. Who knows what she's going to have in store for her for the next couple of years. I know she's got a couple of very happy coaches at St. Mary's that are glad she's around.
Yep. We'll transition now to men's basketball, and Donnie, the men's basketball team won its conference opener last week. That was an exciting game over Carleton, 74-67. You and I were both there for that, and the defensive intensity with which the Cardinals play was really impressive in that game, and you can see they have the makeup of a team that's going to continue throughout the year. And their offense has also improved this year.
No question. And I think the one thing that really stands out this year is the depth. You know, Coach Rusthoven has a lot deeper bench, a lot more talented bench, and I'm not knocking anybody from past seasons, but there's so many talented weapons that he has to go from, and they can all shoot threes. I mean, he's got 10 guys that have had at least one three-pointer in the first 5 games. That's incredible. And you know, I think that to lead this team, you got to look at the 2 seniors that are really stepping up, and that's Wiley Farron and Quashington Smith-Pugh. And Wiley is he's had a great 4 years here at St. Mary's, and it's really, really exciting to see him playing well his senior season. He had 18 points against Concordia and is playing extremely well. Quashington Smith-Pugh is doing an outstanding job. Q is one of those. He's an exciting guy to watch. He can just flat out go and energize a crowd like he did on Saturday when they needed it. And you know, the new guy, you know, Cole is doing a great job as well, and like to see him continue to play well. And you know, they need to continue to spread the wealth as they have. Aaron Romportal's playing very well. He's one of those guys that we talk about that is getting his chance to play and see what he can do, and is really doing an outstanding job. And Chad Schlosser, same thing, kind of a off-the-bench player last year, is coming in and starting this year and doing a phenomenal job. So many names that we can use, and I think that's something that Coach Rusthoven hasn't had in the past, is just a number of options that he has. And Kevin Gleason running the show, you know, from the guard position, and just, again, there's just so many people that he can use and utilize. I'm excited for Cardinal men's basketball. I think there's a very bright future.
Right, and I think that depth is what allows for that defensive intensity, because to keep that up throughout the whole game, all 40 minutes, you've got to bring a lot of players off the bench, and he's certainly done that. And in that game against Carleton, they were outsized. The Cardinals were outsized. It seems like every time Carleton brought in a player off the bench, that player was 6'8". Mm-hmm. But because of that depth, they were able to sort of compensate for that.
Yeah, and the one person I haven't mentioned yet, and I feel terrible for doing it, because talk about energizing a team, and that's Bradley Hill coming off the bench. I mean, this lefty just can rein him in from anywhere. He had 3 threes against Concordia, and he's just one of those people, comes off the bench, and immediately the team, there's a boost in their step. And like you said, I mean, defensively, they're tenacious, and they're going to have to be, because this is one of the bigger teams that Coach has had, but they're still not as big as some of the teams that they're playing, especially in our conference. And you know, to be able to come off the bench and give people, you know, a breather. And I mean, you know, Q's probably getting more rest than he has in any, you know, that he did last year. And so I think it's important that they're able to get rest and stay fresh and stay rejuvenated because of the way that they play at that high intensity level.
And Matt, from a conference level, who are some of the teams and some of the players we'll be hearing a lot of this year?
It'll be an interesting year in men's basketball MIAC. I know, obviously, we're very proud of last year. St. Thomas won the national championship and went through just an absolute gauntlet in the postseason, going through basically the top 5 ranked teams in the nation on the way to the national title. That team graduated a lot of players. St. Olaf went to the second round of the national tournament, graduated a lot of players. St. John's was very good last year, graduated their top 2 players. So Concordia graduated the MIAC Player of the Year in Jordan Bolger. So one thing that I think is really interesting about MIAC basketball this year is St. Thomas has won 12 titles in a row, but I think this year might be the most wide open we've had, and not just at the top, from top to bottom. You're seeing St. Mary's get better. You're seeing McAllister get better. You're seeing Hamlin get better, and maybe the top's coming down a little bit. I think we're going to have a wide open race. Wouldn't surprise me if the conference champ is more like a 14-6 rather than an 18-2, just with the parity and the depth this year. It's going to be really exciting.
You know, we talk a lot about that, Matt, and it isn't just men's basketball, but the parity, the fact, and I think the way you put it really is the way I firmly believe it and I'm seeing is, it's not, you don't have the top top and the bottom. I mean, it's scrunched down, and this year especially, it seems like, we talk about anybody can beat anybody, but it's really true this year, and in men's basketball especially, that anybody can beat anybody.
Sure, yeah, it's been really interesting so far. I think Bethel was picked right at the top of our coaches poll with St. Thomas. They have a ton of talent. I think they're going to be a really good team to watch. Augsburg, I think, has surprised some people so far, and you see some of those other teams maybe inching back down a little bit after graduating so many standouts. So it's going to be a great year in men's basketball. It's going to be one of the more unpredictable years we've had in a long time.
And Matt, we'll kind of go through hockey fairly quickly here, but with women's hockey, the St. Mary's team on a 4-game skid right now. They've played St. Olaf and Concordia in the conference, having trouble scoring right now in those that 4-game skid, just 3 goals. But certainly St. Olaf is very good. Concordia, excellent team this year. So talk about the state of women's hockey.
Yeah, women's hockey for the longest time was Gustavus and everyone else, and then it was St. Thomas and Gustavus and everyone else, and then you kind of add Bethel into that mix. But I think this year we're really seeing the most parity in women's hockey as well. And for the longest time that wasn't the case in women's hockey, and I think you're finally seeing that really get deep. Augsburg's been outstanding this year. They're ranked. They're showing up in the national polls. Hamlin's second year under former Olympian Natalie Darwitz. I think you're really seeing her put her stamp on that program, and they're off to a kind of a program best start so far. St. Mary's is good, Concordia is good, Gustavus and St. Thomas and Bethel are always going to be there. So I think you're looking at probably the most competitive women's hockey season. And I know it feels like we're saying this in every sport, but it really is true. And we wouldn't have always said this in women's hockey in this conference.
Yeah, you were dead on in that. It used to be Gustavus and everybody else because they were so head and shoulders above everyone else. But I think that Coach Manner's going to be happy that he doesn't have to face Andrea Klug, the goalie from Concordia, again until next year, hopefully, because she did shut him out both times on Friday and Saturday. Excellent goalie from Concordia, MIAC Player of the Week. So she was very good, and the Cardinals have got to find a way to generate some offense, and hopefully 2 non-conference games this weekend against Eau Claire and Stevens Point, they'll be able to kind of right that ship a little bit before the break.
Just a couple of minutes for men's hockey, Matt. St. Mary's on a 3-game skid there. Concordia has beaten St. Mary's 3 times, twice this past weekend and then once in the MIAC Hockey Showcase. So they're going to be right there. We know that. St. Mary's is very good. They'll be right there. Who are some of the other teams?
Yeah, Augsburg kind of came out of nowhere to win the conference championship last year and represent us in the NCAA tournament. They've been very good so far this year. I think they're 6th in one poll and 9th in the other. St. Thomas just cracked the top 15 this week after a big sweep over Hamlin in a great St. Paul kind of showdown series. But what I just said about women's hockey, men's hockey's kind of always been the opposite. It is so close, and feels like we always go into the last weekend of the year, and it's four or five teams have a chance to win the championship, and all 9 have a shot at getting in the playoffs, and that's just how it's razor thin in the MIAC. We have so much talent in men's hockey. We have such a great group of coaches. They bring in some really good student athletes, and with no Division II, I mean, we're literally the step right below Division I, and it's Minnesota. We're blessed with a lot of hockey talent in the state of Minnesota, and our coaches take advantage of it, and it's an excellent product. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see, who shapes up. A couple years ago when we had St. Mary's and Hamlin in the championship game, no one saw that coming. So you never know what you're going to get with MIAC men's hockey, but it's always a great ride.
Yeah, you look at last year, there 8 of the 9 teams were in the playoff hunt until the last weekend of the season. So it looks like the way things are shaping up after basically 6 games for us and 4 for everybody else, it's going to be that way again. Gustavus had not won a game all year, came up with a big shootout win last weekend, which just shows you your bottom is going to beat your top, and it's just going to be a great. It's going to be a great season of college hockey, just like basketball. There's so much there for people to kind of clamp onto and just enjoy, because they're going to be wild rides right till the end.
And go ahead.
St. Olaf started really slow. They're under new head coach Mike Eves from Wisconsin, which has brought a lot of attention and excitement to the conference. And now they've been great the last couple of weeks. So it just shows kind of week in and week out. You really don't know what's going to happen in the MIAC in men's hockey.
All right, Matt Higgins from the Assistant Executive Office at MIAC. Thanks for joining us here on the Cardinals Nest.
Yeah,
unfortunately, we're out of time. We've got to run. Thanks for watching here on HBC TV 25.